call to order the meeting of the Verona Plan Commission for Monday, January 3rd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. I will begin with the roll.
Commissioner Tucker Long.
Here.
Commissioner Hingle.
Here.
Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Mayor Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Lytle.
Here.
Alderperson Posey.
Here.
And Commissioner Hankard.
Here.
All right, we have quorum. Next, we'll move on to item 3, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so. All right, I'm not seeing anyone run up to the podium. We'll move on to item 4, which is approval of the minutes from the December 6, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Commissioner Powers.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. Any corrections to the minutes? Seeing no corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the December 6, 2021 Plan Commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no?
I'll abstain because
Okay.
I wasn't here.
Gotcha. That passes with Commissioner Hingle abstaining. We will move on to item 5, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a certified survey map to address lot lines located at 138 Paoli Street. Ms. Holt.
So the property is located in red at 138 Paoli Street. Oh, that's the picture the mayor took, actually, of the house moving. Just to squeeze that in. It is. I should choke it? Okay. So this is where the property is located in red. The applicant is requesting a certified survey map to split lot 60, nope, not lot 64. Wrong one, sorry. The applicant is requesting a corrective certified survey map for CSM 15366, which was approved in February of 2020. Unfortunately, a measurement error of 1 foot was created and is documented per the surveyor's report in the packet, which is towards the end of the CSM. This CSM, if approved, would ensure the correct measurements are used into the future. You could do this another way by meets and bounds, but it is cleaner to do it as a certified survey map. Staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend that the Common Council approve the certified survey map located at 138 Paoli Street.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I move that we recommend to the Common Council that they approve the certified survey map located at 138 Paoli Street.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Lytle. Motion before the body. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seems like a good idea to fix at the risk of stating the obvious. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to adjust lot lines located at 138 Paoli Street, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We'll move on to item 6, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the certified survey map to create 3 lots located at 205 and 209 North 9 Mountain Road. Ms. Holt.
So the property is located in yellow North 9 Mound Road. The applicant is requesting to split 2 existing lots into 3 as seen in this slide. The lots would remain in the neighborhood residential zoning district and exceed the minimum lot area of 6,000 square feet. The setbacks are met for the existing house, and the dashed lines shown on this slide show the minimum setback requirements for the remaining lots. So it also shows where the buildable area is for any future homes. Staff recommends, the Plan Commission recommend, that the Common Council approve the certified survey map to create 3 lots from the existing 2 lots located at 205 and 209 North 9 Mound Road with the following condition. The certified survey map shall be modified for Lot 2 to include a private water utility easement for the benefit of Lot 1 of the CSM.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
So with the easement, does that mean that this land is on well water, or am I missing something? The private water, I don't understand that.
The water line would be shared with both properties, basically, and so they would need an easement to get to the other property. So it's going across Lot 2 to Lot 1, and it's ensuring that it is understood that the city would not be responsible for any of that in that area. And so the Public Works Director wants that added to this to ensure that that is understood. Otherwise, it is actually put on the CSM now, but it at least documents it and brings it to the attention of whomever the homeowners are too.
Fantastic. Thank you for that explanation. That was very helpful.
Other questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
So I move that we recommend to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to create 3 lots from the existing 2 lots located at 205 and 209 North 9 Mound Road with the following condition. The certified survey map shall be modified for Lot 2 to include a private water utility easement for the benefit of Lot 1 of the CSM.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to create 3 lots located at 205 and 209 North 9 Mound Road with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 7, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a certified survey map to split lot number 64 of the Hawthorne Hills subdivision into 2 lots located at 741 and 743 Gatsby Glen Drive. Ms. Holt.
The property is shown in yellow at 741 and 743 Gatsby Glen Drive. The applicant is requesting a certified survey map to split Lot 64 into 2 lots for a twin house, allowing separate sales of the lots. The duplex is under construction, and the proposed certified survey map will not change the structure. The applicant has provided a shared wall agreement as part of the application packet, which is similar to other duplexes in the city. This certified survey map meets the requirements for the mixed residential zoning district. Staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend that the Common Council approve the certified survey map to split Lot 64 of the Hawthorne Hills subdivision into 2 lots with the following condition. A shared wall agreement shall be recorded with the Dane County Register of Deeds.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments or motions on this item? Commissioner Tucker-Long. Yeah.
All right, I move that we recommend to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to split Lot 64 of the Hawthorne Hills subdivision into 2 lots with the following condition. A shared wall agreement shall be recorded with the Dane County Register of Deeds.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Hingle. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to split lot number 64 of the Hawthorne Hills subdivision into 2 lots located at 741 and 743 Gatsby Glen Drive with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 8, which is reports and comments from the Planning Department. First up, we have an update on potential zoning ordinance changes. Mr. Sayre.
Thank you. This is an item we've talked about before. We've mentioned we're going to come back with some potential ideas and suggestions that have come from staff and other people that have been kind of working directly with the ordinances developers. So this is just for discussion tonight. There's no action on it, but just looking for general kind of feedback and direction if there's any interest in moving forward with any of these changes or not. So I'll kind of break these into a couple different categories. I think the first kind of set we'll tackle here is just some setback changes potentially we'd like to consider. We'll kind of start with the suburban industrial district. The original side yard setback for this was in the last ordinance 10 feet. I believe now it's 20 feet. And the original rear yard setback also was 20 feet, and now it's 25 feet. I think from a staff level standpoint, we'd probably recommend taking a look at this and just reducing those setbacks. It'll give some additional flexibility. I'm not sure to be honest, why those were changed in the ordinance. That's also, when we looked at it with the consultant, it was, our intention was to probably keep that in place as kind of status quo. But, so we can like take a look at that and take it back to how it used to be. Looking at the neighborhood office setbacks, once again, the original rear yard setback in the old ordinance was 25 feet, now it's 30. We're comfortable putting that back to 25 again. Once again, just, it went up by 5 feet. And then a pavement setback, that was removed as part of the new ordinance. This is a concern that's been raised by our building inspectors, and their recommendation is to put back the previous setback, which I believe was 5 feet. And the reason for that, it will help with potential drainage issues and also hopefully cut down on some potential neighbor property line issues as well. I guess any thoughts, any concerns, any comments on those setback items?
Thoughts from the Plan Commission?
If there's no opinion, you can just, I guess, stay silent. I'll take that as a...
Commissioner Hangard?
Thank you. Well, on the pavement thing, I agree. My neighbor's lot line comes right together, and they share a driveway, and I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think they would agree it's a good thing, so I get that. On the setbacks in general, you're looking to go to shorter ones, basically keep the existing ones as they were. Is there any way to make that dependent on what's next door? Because if I'm in a suburban industrial, so I'm thinking industrial development or office development, if I'm next to a residential property, then a little more is a good thing. If I'm next to another office, nobody cares, so less is a good thing. I mean, is there any differentiation from that standpoint?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could look at it from that standpoint, where if it's, if you're adjacent to a use that's zoned residential, that's typically how you see it written. So if you're in an industrial area and the property next to you is zoned residential, there are potentially, you can put larger setbacks in there. Typically, if it's a non-residential use, then you don't worry as much. It's when you have those conflicting uses in place, that's something we could take a look at, and we could put something like
I'm
that.
not trying to complicate things over 5 feet. You know, you're not talking about significant changes here, but nonetheless, 5 feet could make a difference to a homeowner who doesn't want to be next to a 3-story or whatever it could be, office building, for example.
So it's not an uncommon requirement. We do have buffer yards requirements for screening purposes when it's adjacent uses like that. But yeah, we can look at putting something like that in place. That's easy to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lytle?
And then, I guess, thinking about the pavement setbacks, the note says it would be reinstated for all zoning districts. You know, I think about what we just approved as far as a shared wall split of a duplex, and I know those duplex were built with one driveway, very wide, serving them both. I think about the chiropractic office on West Verona that was going to have a shared wall potentially with the house leisure threads. So here's another situation where if it were commercial next to commercial, you know, why is there, would this apply that they couldn't, you know, have their driveways touching? So in that situation, it seems like maybe where we're trying to, you know, promote maximization of space, having that for all zoning districts might not be useful, might not be the best option, but curious to hear what others think.
Mr. Sayre, did you have a comment for that?
Typically, on the shared driveways, those are broken out in a separate kind of section to kind of handle that. This deals with, if I was living next door to you, for example, and I wanted to put, I want to expand my driveway, let's say, that's where it would be applicable, or a typical industrial property where they can't just take that driveway right up to that lot line. If it's actually shared, that's a whole different process altogether. Now, we do encourage those in some situations, and in a lot of them. One, it cuts down on pavement, but then second, from a driveway cut standpoint into certain roadways, that's where we want to see those. So that's, we can handle that kind of, I think we can handle that concern that you raised.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? I'll just add myself real quick while other people might be thinking, and just say, yeah, I'm open to changing these, especially if it's back to the way they were. And I definitely agree about the pavement thing, just because we get complaints about flooding, and I can only imagine if someone on a tilted lot put a patio or something right to the property edge and flooded their neighbor's backyard. Like, that shouldn't be allowed. But yeah, any other thoughts on setbacks? Oh, Commissioner Power?
I would echo Commissioner Hankert's ideas about the adjacent to a residential neighborhood. Like that idea.
Other thoughts on setbacks? I believe there's more, so, Mr. Zaire?
Thank you. Let's talk about campers. So in the old ordinance, we had language that dealt with the parking of campers, and this typically becomes a problem this time of year when campers are not being used and not being taken out and used for camping. They're just sitting in driveways or sitting someplace. When the new ordinance was done, it stripped out all the language kind of relating to campers, trailers, boats, snowmobiles, portable storage containers, and some of the junk and debris requirements. The concern was raised by the building inspection department just from a code enforcement standpoint of we could be setting ourselves up for some issues here, especially when it comes to just if you have a camper or something parked out there for a while, we'll have limited options of kind of how we're going to enforce that and potentially get that to look better or remove it ultimately. There were standards in the old ordinance that kind of dealt with if people were parking it on the property, it dealt with where it could be parked, and if it was being parked for a certain amount of time, screening requirements as well on top of that. The recommendation, I think, from the building inspection department would be to put back very similar language to what we had in the ordinance previously to kind of handle these situations. In the past, we do get, I'd say, about 5 or 10 complaints a year about campers being parked in driveways, whether it's the size, whether it's the location, whether it's duration. We then do get, I don't want to say griping, but we get issues with the people that own the campers because ultimately they would like to park it in their driveway, and then it becomes a cost issue if they have to store it off-site. So there are two sides to kind of that requirement in the ordinance, but I think staff initially here would like to put some language back in to at least regulate these in some fashion, whether it be the same way we used to or something kind of similar to how we dealt with that. So, but we're, like I said, open for feedback and comments. And there's, like I said, there's no action tonight, so if it's just, sure, draft something up, we can draft it up and we can talk more about it at a future meeting.
Thoughts from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long?
I guess my thoughts on campers are that when it comes to sight lines on the road, I'm assuming that means when you're driving down the road, you can't see around the corner because it's parked there? Is that?
No, it's being parked in the driveway. So the street parking is a completely different issue that is typically handled by the police department. This is if they're parking like in your driveway or if trying to park on the side of the house or even the rear of the house.
But if the concern is the sight lines on the road, what does that mean?
Typically, in some cases, especially areas that don't have sidewalks, these will be parked pretty much up to the curb line in some cases. I know I dealt with one a while back on Knoll. It was a large camper. It met the length requirement, but it was a big camper, and you start talking a setback of 25 feet and a camper that's 24 feet. It's virtually, with the hitch on it, it's virtually going up to that curb line. So that's kind of the sightline issue. The bigger sightline issue is, quite honestly, the corner lots. That's where we have bigger issues on sightlines with landscaping and vehicles being parked.
Okay. So I guess my thoughts would be that if it's a safety issue, as far as making sure pedestrians aren't getting hit or cars aren't getting hit, things like that, that I'm in favor of having some language in there. If it's just people don't want other people to have things parked in their driveway, I guess I don't really see that as a zoning requirement, in my opinion, unless it's causing some sort of safety issue.
I guess I'll call on myself real quick and just say I agree with what Commissioner Tucker-Long said. I think, yeah, like blocking sightlines, blocking sidewalks. I've seen a camper over a sidewalk, which is kind of irritating, and also it's public right of way, and people should be able to walk without having to go into the road to get around someone's camper. On the other hand, for me, it's always been, private property is private property. And as long as the camper is contained on the private property, then I feel like that's fine by me. I don't own a camper, but if my neighbor has one, I don't really care, as long as it's not blocking the road. But those are my thoughts. Other thoughts from the Plan Commission on this one? Commissioner Powers?
I mean, this is separate from the like the things that individual communities might have. I know some of them have like bylaws within their
Covenants?
covenants. Yeah, so this is completely separate, right?
The city does not enforce covenants. So if an association enforces the covenants, that's up to the association.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with the other folks here and their comments so far that I think people, if it's within their own property, I don't think it makes much of a difference as long as it's not a safety threat. People who choose to live in areas that enforce their covenants can then choose to live in those areas and not worry about campers or boats or whatever it might be. And if you buy a house in an area that allows them, you probably noticed it when you drove in to purchase the house.
Commissioner Hingle.
I agree about the comments that have been made, but I also see something here about junk and debris. I guess I would be in favor of language to limit junk and debris.
Yeah, so with campers, what we could do is, if there's interest, we could focus on the sightline aspect and kind of the public safety, but then add language on top of that if it's inoperable or if it's in disrepair of some type, I guess. I'm not sure what the term we'd use, but we could add something that would kind of deal with it. If it falls into that, it's not being used and it's just sitting there and it's been sitting there for 6 months, 6 years, that's a different versus being actively kind of used. So there's ways we can handle that as part of some language too.
Other thoughts on campers from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I had a quick question for Commissioner Hinkle. Did you mean if the camper is junk and debris, or did you mean if there's also junk and debris in addition to a camper?
I meant junk and debris, not necessarily a camper, although I have seen like a house that had an old car that had been sitting there for like 10 years.
Sure.
And I don't know, I would like something like that to be taken care of.
So Adam, are we just talking strictly camper zoning at this point, or are we addressing all the things in the list here, boats, trailers, junk and debris, and everything else?
Pretty much what we talk about is mostly just the camper side, the things that have wheels and can be pulled or pulled behind your car. We'll double check the language. I'm sure we have language regarding just general junk and debris, whether in zoning, whether in a different section of the ordinance. But this is the typical stuff that is getting pulled, and then ultimately seasonal jet skis, boats, whatnot. But we'll also verify just that we have enough language to cover ourselves, getting back to like garbage or animal waste. I know that's in different sections as well.
Alder Posey.
I think this may have been lower down, but it might not be a different section, so please clarify if it isn't. But talking about usage, does that go in this ordinance? Because I do get concerned about us having campers parked in front of people's homes long-term, seeing Airbnb usage, and kind of people starting to move people in as an extension of their homes long-term, as opposed to it just being stored in their front yard.
Mr. Sayre?
I think in the old ordinance, we did deal with the usage of it. Regarding, how long it can sit there, you could put a time limit on that. I think the old ordinance had 30 days, which is a pretty short window, I'll say that. But you could put a time limit on it. So the last ordinance we defined kind of just, storage wasn't allowed, and indications of storage included there was off-season, winterization, and non-use for a period of 30 consecutive days. I mean, you could put some language in there that it's got to be used within 90, 180 days, whatever that number would be. You could put that type of language in there. So it's allowable if the commission wanted to do that.
And I'll just share that I know I've heard concerns about kind of transient use of homes growing and people being concerned about things. And so that would be something that if we're talking about more campers being parked in front lots, being aware of what that could lead to long-term. And I'm not entirely against this, and I definitely hear what everyone's talking about safety-wise, but I do think it opens that door for people to use it as an extension of their home and a potential even revenue source. So.
I have a quick follow-up, and then Commissioner Lytle. So I know we can't directly, because of state law, I believe we're preempted, regulate like Airbnb and Verbo and all those other ones, could we just say you can't rent out a temporary, like you can't rent out your camper?
Sure, I mean, language in the old ordinance says vehicles may be used for temporary sleeping quarters if all the conditions are met. One, the vehicle's owned by the occupant or guest of the occupant of the residence. Two, the vehicle's designed for such use. Three, the vehicle may temporarily be connected to an improvable electrical connection but not be connected to wastewater, sanitary, or water. Four, the vehicle of this type may not exceed an aggregate of 14 days in any 30-day period, which is, it's probably getting to the point of if somebody had a baby or somebody had a large event at their house, people could sleep in it. And then five, the vehicle should be parked on the parcel in conformance with section D, which I'm not sure what that means. But it's probably on a paved area. Typically, you want to make sure these don't get put into the grass. So there are ways that you could allow kind of those exceptions of, mom and dad come to visit, or hey, you just had a baby and your house is 2 bedrooms and there's not enough bedrooms in the house. I mean, there are ways you could temporarily, accommodate that as part of the ordinance too, to deal with the long-term impacts of that concern.
Gotcha. I have Commissioner Ladle and then Commissioner Tucker-Lawn.
Yeah, that you brought up, Mr. Mayor, the exact topic I was curious about. I would like, I think, pretty much the previous ordinance in terms of temporary sleeping quarters. I mean, I know lots of folks in our neighborhood, their kids are bothering them to go camping, and they're like, well, we can't go camping this weekend, but I'll set up the pop-up camper. So why would we want to stop people from doing that? But at the same time, I don't see a good reason why someone should be using it long-term. So this seems to be a pretty good way to kind of regulate that.
Commissioner Tucker-Lawn.
Going along with wording options, could we have something where, like, you can't rent out or permanently reside in a temporary structure or a temporary something on your property? And that way, that way they can't rent out or permanently live in a trailer, because that wouldn't be a permanent structure.
I think you'd want to add it here, like for a camper. I mean, a temporary structure, that gets into you don't have occupancy actually to stay in that. A camper is a little different because I think that's regulated probably by a federal or state code, I would imagine, of just how it's built and used. I think you'd want to put that language in here that having some type of duration or having some type of limitation on how it can be used, and whether it's owned by the occupant or a guest. That might be the best way of doing it. We haven't had any issues now in the past as of yet, having any issues of them being rented out. We do have Airbnbs in the city, a handful, but I'm not aware of these being rented out in the past in the city. But the best way might be to try to drop some of that old language back into it and see if that does the trick.
Other thoughts on campers? Commissioner Hankard.
Back to the long-term storage. I'm happy with everything you guys are talking about in terms of renting it out. But I live in the old part of town where there aren't covenants. Lots are relatively small. And somebody comes in with one of these 30-foot monsters or whatever there and puts it in their driveway, and yeah, it fits. It's not blocking the sidewalk. It's not blocking anyone's view. But I don't love campers, I'll be honest with you. I don't love them at all. I wouldn't necessarily want to look at that. If it's not that big and they can tuck it around, everything's got nuances. But somehow that long-term storage, like we have a snow ordinance, right, from November 1st to April 30th or whatever the heck it is, you can't do X, Y, or Z. You can't park a camper more than X feet long on your property. I don't know. So that would be something to that degree would be my leaning.
Commissioner Tucker-Lawn.
Just for clarification then, Commissioner Hankard, what would you prefer people do with their trailers or their campers at that point? You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get into a situation, well, we just move it onto the street for part of the time, and, because that's not solving your problem of, it's actually probably making it worse,
No, because again, I've lived through this near and dear. I've had neighbors do this, and so I get it. And there's a million places to go store your camper during the winter. There's people with inside, outside, barns, parking lots. plenty of options, not on the street, obviously. So, yeah, you don't want to get down to a little pop-up, somebody's like, I got to haul my pop-up trailer off my property, what? No, I mean, I'm talking about these larger, I don't know, 20 feet or more or something.
Other thoughts from the Planning Commission on campers? I guess question to staff, is there enough to at least get us a menu of options?
I think we can come back with, not an actual public hearing for this item, but when we come back, we'll come back with a future meeting here next month or two and just have some ideas, and then you guys can beat it up. And we can kind of see how it shakes out, I guess, if that's the best way. It's probably the best way of doing this. But I think we've got enough to at least take a crack at this thing.
Okay, I believe there's more stuff on the list.
Yeah, we're going to landscaping next. I'll split this one into two. So just one of the comments we've gotten from landscape architects has been, we have a requirement in the ordinance is that 75% of the landscaping species need to be native to Wisconsin. And there's also specific, landscaping requirements for parking islands, parking mediums as well. But there's very limited requirements for additional trees outside of those areas. So one of the things we want to look at is just, one, adding some additional requirements so we can make sure that we're requiring more trees in the property. As of right now, like for Arrowhead and Starbucks, they did that without us even asking, but we run the risk of, technically it's not in the ordinance to put those trees in some of those kind of open spaces, so we want to add some language back into that. But kind of getting back to this 75% requirement, the issue has been kind of raised to us is just that there's a concern that it's too high of a percentage, and they're concerned about just making sure the landscape architects are concerned about making sure these plantings survive and also not infecting others just with diseases potentially. So we wanted to bring that back just to the Planning Commission just for feedback, because that's a comment that's come from a couple landscape architects here of just, one, they're struggling to find the natives, which I think in talking with a few of them, I think we're going to start providing them with a list the DNR puts out of what is actually native to Wisconsin, so we'll be providing that to them. They'll take care of part of the issue. But a couple just, like I said, felt the percentage was too high. Wanted to kind of bring that back just for feedback.
I'm going to call myself first, since this is near and dear to my heart. But yeah, I would advocate for no reduction in the percentage of native trees. I think tree planting is something that's going to, to be frank, is going to outlive all of us. And, requiring developers who stand to make a ton of money on their projects to plant some things that sync in better with the natural environment, I think is good. And I think that we should continue to require it. I get that this is a little bit kind of new, and that, depending on which kind of plant nursery you go to, this might be a little more difficult to find the variety. Like, you're probably just going to find a ton of eastern white pine. But between, city staff, I would be more than happy to help some of these folks find stuff. And I know there's options. I know it's available. So I would really just rather leave it in there because I think it can be met. I mean, we could even ask our friends at Epic, because I know they run a pretty sizable horticultural department, and I think that, they've always been willing to help out with the city with knowledge and things like that. So I think, if it's an issue of background or needing some help, I'm more than happy to help people meet the requirements. And then just, in general for the sort of spreading the trees out, I think that's good too, and I'm definitely in favor of that. And I really appreciate both Starbucks and Arrowhead doing the right thing, even though they didn't have to. But yeah, I'm happy to hear what other people have to say. Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I agree. I don't want to decrease the number of native plantings. I'd honestly be okay if, we wanted to make it more, just to try to keep things not only living, but also having fewer invasive species, like crowding off of places and infecting nature areas around it. But the other thing I was going to say too is it says there are only 2 evergreen species that are native to Wisconsin, and that's not true. We have like 8 or something. Like, there's quite a few.
I think the comment we've gotten is there's 2 that are available to actually get, and the rest are very difficult to meet, because you also have, and Luke and I were talking about this before the meeting, so you have to get a certain size of it as well too. So to find some of these is difficult. I do think there are more than that, but to actually find them is challenging.
So maybe we could address the sizing issue of the native plants then, or something, I don't know.
I wouldn't do that. The challenge you run into is then if you're putting only like a 2-foot tree in, I mean, your trees are going to take forever to kind of grow up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to, I wouldn't decrease that size. That I would not do, ever.
Yeah, and they require the smaller ones, from personal experience, like a lot of attention because the rabbits and the deer will eat them, even if you cage them sometimes. And so, I mean, that's a downside, I guess, of being native, is that it's what animals expect to eat. But yeah, I definitely think it is bigger. I do think this stuff is available. I do definitely agree, though, that it's rare, and some of this stuff is hard to find. But I think, like I said, developers tend to make a ton of money on these projects, and they could go put a little bit of extra effort into this, is what I think. But sorry. Other thoughts from the Planning Commission? Alder Posey.
I'll just add on that area, what we were talking about, the additional trees in the undeveloped portions, that I would definitely support putting something in there that does require that. As far as native species and landscaping, that is so far beyond my realm of knowledge. I will support where we're going. But I'd also be curious to know if landscape developers are we talking about our local folks who work in our zone, or developers who are coming in from outside? And then also what suggestion percentage they were saying they'd be comfortable with.
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, the two that I know off the top of my head are local ones that do a lot of landscaping plans for projects. I think their preference was closer to 50%. That was, I don't think it was a strong preference. I think the last one I spoke to, his big push was give us a list so we kind of know we're all kind of working off the same playing field, at least here. He was concerned just about maintenance as well, just long term. He thinks there's going to be some education that has to go into your point of potential landscape architects coming from outside the area, not understanding it, because it is kind of a newer requirement. But definitely the two that we work with they do about 50% of the plans, no pun intended. I mean, they do a lot of the plans that you actually see coming forward here, and that was a comment from both of them. So, I mean, as staff, we wanted to at least bring this back and kind of just let you know that issues come up, just so you're not surprised in the future if somebody raises it back, that we've at least had this conversation as well, too. That's kind of part of the reason why we're coming back with a few of these ideas, too.
Other thoughts from the Planning Commission? Oh, Commissioner Lidle.
So I'll plead guilty to not recalling the exact change in the ordinance as far as landscape, and I know there used to be a points system, and we moved away from that to have maybe more specific landscaping requirements for certain areas. And so what we're trying to do is maybe find a better balance. That's the first question. I'll let you, and then.
Yeah, we used to have a point system. We went away from that. We went real heavy on foundation plantings and also plantings in and around parking areas. And that's kind of where the other the kind of green open space got lost of what do you do with that, and do you have to put plantings in there? That's kind of why we want to make sure we come back with some language that addresses those blank areas. But yeah, I think it's also light around the dumpster. I think we have language around the dumpsters, if I'm not mistaken, as well, too. So it went real heavy into those areas, and then it kind of just drops off a cliff. Where it gets to the plantings is it talks about just the overall plantings have to have 75% of those plantings have to be native. We're seeing a lot more grasses than we ever used to. I think there's a couple certain types of grasses in Wisconsin that do very well. Some of them they don't flower, you don't get much color with it, but they are native, and obviously that it counts towards the points, which in the past those typically had not counted.
So are you looking for input from the Plan Commission as far as whether we want you to be more prescriptive for other green spaces, or do you guys have some ideas already as far as some mixture of keeping the existing specific requirements for foundation and enclosure and parking islands, that kind of thing?
We want to keep that and just add on to it.
Okay. I'm cool with that. And then, because my brother-in-law, the arborist, and I have had many conversations about this, I think the only concern I would have about focusing on native species is if we're suffering from a lack of biodiversity because of it. Because, if the developers are coming in with 2 types of trees every time, and then suddenly there is a new invasive issue, and, everything developed between 2018 and 2030, all their trees are dying at once, then I'd be more concerned about keeping the percentage at 75. But do we, as part of our plan review, are we pushing for that diversity, or do we need to put that in the ordinance as well, that there need to be at least 4 types of species to avoid those kind of issues? Because, what was an amazing tree 10 years ago now is dying everywhere, and it's happening all over, and maybe a little less here, but certainly plenty of places in the U.S.
I don't think we have that in there right now. I mean, we can go out and see if we can find language elsewhere. I mean, that sounds like something that, kind of to your point, I'm sure it's happened. I think Colorado has gone through a bunch of, there's a needle, I'm looking at Mike, there's like a needle rust out there of some type. So I know there's a bunch of areas that just been hit, and obviously Dutch elm from many, many years ago, but we can go back and see if we can borrow or steal some language from somebody else, that if they have something good, we can take a look.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Hinkard?
A couple things. So no disrespect to the landscape architects that work for all the developers, but they are consultants. You always want to get, an independent, so there's, maybe your brother-in-law is the guy, but Bruce Allison is the arborist in Madison, for example. He takes care of the capital trees. He did a consult on my house. It was worth its weight in gold. So, what do people like that say to your desire, Mayor, of keeping these percentages high? Because certainly at a fundamental level, yeah, native sounds great, and maybe it is. And to your point, maybe then but that forces them into this, we only get 2 trees. So what does an expert say about, what does a city like Verona do? And then to say nothing of climate change, or whatever you want to call it, the pine beetle in Colorado was due to the temperature change. The beetles didn't get killed in the winter. That's what happened. So, I got 2 ash in my front yard that I'm treating. We got all this going on. So, I'm all for your 75%, particularly if an expert were to say, yeah. And because these guys say those trees, they can't get them. Well, they can't get them and they haven't tried hard enough, or they don't want to pay for it. Those are 2 different things. If Home Depot doesn't have it, you go to Brunzell. And then if Brunzell doesn't have it, Brunzell special orders it for you. That's, you go up the chain of command. You can find these other species, I assume, with enough money and effort. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Other feedback for the Plan Commission? Should have brought water. Thought it'd be a short enough meeting, though, that I wouldn't need it. Any other feedback on the landscaping? Okay. We got more stuff.
2 more. We got 2 more,
2 more.
then we'll shorten this thing up. So next one's lot coverage. That's in the new ordinance. We have a maximum impervious surface, so any hardscape kind of parking lot, building, anything that doesn't drain water is considered impervious. For the central commercial district, that requirement is a maximum of 40% of the site, and the suburban industrial, there's a maximum of 60% on that site. So for the Starbucks project and also for the KSW project, that was kind of both those projects recently before you, both those developers got a little creative in trying to meet that number. In both cases, we heard some grumblings about that requirement. So for the KSW one, if you recall, they shifted the lot lines around in order to incorporate the wetland in to kind of meet that requirement. For the Starbucks project, what they did was they actually dropped the development area just east of their site. They initially had an additional building on there, and they had to drop that in order to kind of meet that requirement. We had some old language in the ordinance, the last ordinance, that was quite bad, in my opinion. They had a landscape surface ratio And then it also had a maximum building coverage. It was quite convoluted, so we were attempting with this impervious surface ratio to try to get something that was more quantifiable in the sense of, here's how much of your site can be kind of hardscape, here's how much of your site that actually can be green space. It just kind of makes more sense, and it's more intuitive from a kind of big picture standpoint. So I guess we wanted to bring this back because the issues come up, and you know, I guess the question, the Plan Commission ultimately is, do you see this as an issue or concern? And we haven't gone out and looked at this in too much detail yet. We wanted to see if there was a concern about this, since developers are raising this as a concern to us. They're just thinking that the number is too high, to be quite honest. Part of it is how we calculate the number is based upon, we do not count wet stormwater ponds towards the kind of the open space number. We count that as impervious since it's not usable green space. We do count dry stormwater ponds because kind of in our opinion that is an area if somebody could walk into it any kind of, well, most of the time they could walk into it and it'd be usable green space. But one, please come back here and say, is that a concern of the Plan Commission for us to kind of, should we go back and kind of look at these numbers and say, are we too high or are we fine? I mean, we didn't want to really dive into it to kind of, until we got your feedback if you had any concerns about that or not. But like I said, we've heard grumbling on that one as well too.
Thoughts from the Plan Commission on this one?
And I should say on top of this too, green roofs also, so that's part of the reason why Arrowhead came in with a very large green roof. We've been trying to push people in that direction, and it's expensive, so it's a very hard push, but so that is one else an exception that they can kind of use to get around this as well.
Commissioner Powers, I believe?
Have we seen negative consequences? I know Starbucks grumbled, but they've built 10,000 stores. I don't particularly care. But have we seen developers get to the end and say, like, this was too hard to work with?
I don't think we've been in it long enough to know that. I know that the comment from Starbucks was, well, this is more of an urban site, which we can debate that all day, but it's an urban site, and having this large green space isn't appropriate in this location. Now, obviously, there's ways you can get around it. You can cut down your parking. In that case, they made their lot bigger, and they dropped part of their project. It's still relatively brand new. I think, when Arrowhead, that project came forward, I think it surprised the engineer initially about that, and they obviously got around it, so they made it work. It hasn't killed anything yet.
The outcome there was the green roof.
The green roof, I mean, obviously they had a lot of landscaping islands actually inside the parking lot, and that's also a code requirement as well too, but that does help them out in the sense of that it does add towards the green space. But the green roof definitely got bigger as that project went on. That project, if it's going to have any issues, wouldn't be until a future phase comes forward, to be honest.
It feels like a positive outcome with that second one. I don't know as much about the Starbucks, what the second building would have been. If it was a Chipotle, maybe we lost out, but if we just got the green roof out of it, it feels like we went in the right direction with it. I don't know if other people have thoughts. I mean, pushing them to make things better, I think, is what we want to be doing, but if it's costing us things, then maybe not.
Commissioner Hankard?
So if I may ask, what is the goal then of the higher percentage of open space? Is it to give people a place to go sit and have their coffee, or is it to retain water, or is it to provide just a natural area? Because, like, for example, Starbucks, I wouldn't think you would want to make them create space for people to be. I mean, you're surrounded by the school property. There's like, if you want to go have a place to sit and drink your coffee, there's a million options in that area. So what's the goal, I guess, of the higher percentage?
Mr. Zaire?
The goal is have more usable and green space.
Usable.
In the sense of, I mean, if you kind of look at, since we're picking on Starbucks, we'll look at East Rowan Avenue as well with those projects. Those meant obviously the old ordinance requirements, and the green space are kind of the areas in there that could be used is virtually none. It's basically just setbacks, and that's all you have. So the intent was trying to actually get some green space on there that just wasn't, I don't want to say token green space, but I mean just kind of trying to make it so it looks like more like a green site, looking that it's more not natural per se, but trying to actually make it not look as, just a strip retail. All it is concrete. So trying to get to the, having a higher number so it would have that look, feel, and actually have space that people, if they wanted to, could sit in, and it's not just a sea of parking. That was the intent of it, and obviously that's what it's doing, because you have a Starbucks project that has an open green space just east of the property there, which, maybe long-term is a good thing, I don't know, we'll find out.
Right, I know, I'm just, in my mind there's also the desire, in my opinion, within the city to grow somewhat dense, so we lost another rooftop, that could have got squeezed in, and so it's a balance.
Other thoughts? Commissioner Lytle?
I guess, similar to what Commissioner Hankard was saying, I would be in favor whether it could count up to 10% of, green space to allow the wet storage to, it's not pavement, it's not, I have to think about this, I guess it's not generating runoff because it's storing whatever falls there. That would give a little more flexibility, 10%, 15% to count toward green space for storage, wet storage. And then the other thing, and I guess, if the engineer were here, I'm surprised there aren't more projects looking at some kind of porous pavement, pavers for certain portions. And I don't know if that's a Wisconsin silt doesn't really stay porous as you were expecting, but, I would think certain portions of sidewalks, parking lots where silt isn't getting washed, you might be able to do that at least as economically as putting a green roof on your building, but maybe that's why we should have the real engineer here.
Well, with Carla, we gave her the night off, so we thought it was a light agenda, quite honestly. That's why she's not here, so I probably shouldn't have, but anyways, doesn't matter. With porous pavements, we've talked about that a lot with staff, and the reality is they don't get maintained. So we treat those in essence as no different than any type of concrete. They got to be vacuumed out. It's just the maintenance aspect of that. And not to point at Epic, but Epic doesn't have any of that. And there's a reason why. Just ultimately, it's not as it doesn't work as well as advertised long term. And they usually end up plugging up, and then you just have regular pavement by that point once they've plugged up. One of the options, you can look at building exemptions into it, or you could potentially look at just taking the percentage down. If instead of trying to build in exemptions, a way people can get around it, you could just, to your point, take those percentages down 10%. Or you could wait. I mean, ultimately, people could go the plan development route, I believe, on these items. And back to that animal again, if we go that route, if you start seeing enough of them and people asking for it and they're really good projects, I mean, you could take that approach as well at some point as well, too, which I know we tried to avoid that with the new ordinance, but that's always an option, too.
Commissioner Hankard?
But I think, Adam, instead of taking it down to 10%, I like Pat's idea because he's rewarding the good, which is a pond is better than nothing, a non-usable green space. I would like to steer them in the direction of more pond, versus what I think you were alluding to was just take the percentage down and then.
I was looking at simply just taking the percentage down. What you could do is you could say if there's a wet pond, instead of getting no
0.
credit, you get 25,
Yeah,
or you get
something for
50%,
it.
or whatever percentage you want to put into the thing.
Right, incentivize
We
it.
could do that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm going to call on myself for this. I'm not opposed to counting some of the ponds in part. I would like to say that if we're going to count them as usable, they should, maybe have a trail or a bench or a tree or actually be nicer than, no offense to Public Works, but be nicer than stormwater facilities. Be like an actual, like the Sound Street pond across from the library. I think that's excellent and people seem to really like it. So if it was something like that, I'm all for it. But if it's something that's a little industrial, then I would say no. But yeah, other thoughts on lot coverage? Alder Posey.
I think I would agree with using the storm pond as long as there's some sort of addition to it, so it's not just sitting there. But I guess I'm also really okay pushing developers into some new spaces that they are challenged to develop some unique things to meet our goals for our community. I know we have sustainability criteria that we're trying to meet. We're talking to people about solar panels and everything else. I'm okay with pushing them in a little bit of a direction. I think we've seen some projects come through that have gotten better as they've gone through the process. I know that doesn't make your lives easier as staff, and that's the biggest challenge for me saying that out loud. But I think seeing some of the projects that have come through and as they've developed, become some really great members of our community going forward.
Mr. Sayer?
We don't mind it being difficult. We just want to make sure that if it comes back here and you hear the complaint or gripe, that we've talked about it and we have your backing. That's what we want to make sure. Well, that's part of the reason why we're coming back here on some of these, is to make sure we've checked the box. Yes, we've talked to the Plan Commission, and that when those projects come back and you hear any grumbling of someone standing at the podium, that you're not looking at us going, well, we didn't know this. So that's part of it, is we're all on the same page, and we're always happy to go out and do it as long as you're standing behind us. So that's part of why we're here tonight, too.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission on lot coverage? All right, I think there's one more, outdoor dining.
Yeah, outdoor dining, this hopefully will be quick. So as part of the new ordinance, we put standards in for outdoor dining since COVID doesn't want to end. And the last project that we had was with the restaurant out in the Sugar Creek Commons redevelopment. We'd like to loosen our standards in outdoor dining just to give more flexibility. So I don't think we want to throw out all the requirements in there. We want to probably make some just guidelines or encouragements, but we want to, I guess, kind of give additional flexibility as part of that, because outdoor dining, it will not be going away anytime soon. You will continue to see that is the trend that the service industry and every industry is going to, just because of COVID, and it will not change anytime soon. So we want to go back in there and just kind of tweak those. Like I said, not probably throw out the requirements, maybe make them into guidelines and encourage it in some situations, but then probably give additional flexibility as a project goes forward, then to see what we can do with staff. But like I said, just want to go in there and make some changes to be more consistent with what we've approved recently.
Thoughts on this one? Alder Posey?
I'm really excited for more outdoor dining in our community. I love it, and I know a lot of community members really enjoy it, especially when our weather is nice. A little tougher as we get to this time of year, but I think it's been a really great addition to see it grow and figure out ways that we can do more of that.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long?
I also really like the outdoor dining, and I would like to encourage it.
Commissioner Lytle?
So I know the last page of the packet has ordinance regarding outdoor with and without. I couldn't see whether that's current ordinance or that was previous ordinance for outdoor dining.
So it is current. I mean, that was the standards that we were putting on every conditional use permit, at least for the last 8, 9, 10 years. So what we want to do is kind of go in there and probably make some of those guidelines. Even the first one should be located on a hard paved surface. I mean, yeah, if you go down the Paoli, obviously you can go down there to the hop garden and you're in the grass. So, I mean, there's additional flexibility that we can provide that I think will still kind of meet the intent and goals here. So, we would plan on going into that section and making some changes.
Great.
Other thoughts on outdoor dining? Seeing no further hands, Mr. Sayer, is that everything?
That's everything for the zoning ordinance changes.
All right. With that, we'll move on to 8B, which is the update on development projects.
I don't have much. We had the former Sugar Creek Elementary School building, the demolition of that. Well, there was a brief little ceremony last week, so they put a hole in it, but the bulk of that's going to start this week, so that is underway. Other than that, I don't think have any additional updates unless there's questions for me.
Questions for Mr. Sayre? Seeing no questions, we'll move, oh, sorry. Commissioner Leyland?
You can call me out of order if you'd like, because I know this is probably a Public Works question. But Waste Management, I saw a truckload of dumpsters or in the home dumpsters leaving town, right? That's actually happening, and I don't have to get approached every few hours by someone wondering what the heck happened, and are they going to stick us with these things in the middle of a blizzard and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so yes, mine got picked up today, so I'm close to you, so maybe yours is tomorrow. They are continuing to pick those up. If you actually head out towards the Little League fields, there's a whole stack of them out there, and that's the staging area. So if you drive out there, not at night, well, you can see them now probably, but it's literally, God, it's a quarter of that parking lot of those dumpster, those little canisters. They're taking the wheels off from there, and they're also taking the lids off, and then they're loading them up on a truck to truck out of here. So the issue was with that was the snow event didn't help that, and like everyone, they have staffing shortages, so they are having a hard time getting those out. So it was a combination of factors. They should be gone by Wednesday at the latest. That's what they're telling us now. So hopefully. It's not making our public works life easier because obviously plowing snow and these things are in the street now. It's not good for anybody. So yes, we'd like them gone.
Yeah, January 5th. Hopefully they should all be gone. Other questions for Mr. Sayre? Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to item 9, which is adjournment. A motion to adjourn would be in order. Motion by Commissioner Powers. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 7:32 p.m. Thank you.